Hello, and welcome to the Alabama Public Health Training Network. Drug use changes brain chemistry in adolescents whose brains are still developing, and 90% of addicted Americans began using before 18 years of age. Today we will discuss adolescent drug use patterns with an emphasis on prescription drug use, emerging trends in new drug use, and examples of ways adolescents are now hiding their drugs and paraphernalia in plain sight. Thank you for joining us today for our program, The United States of Numb, Current Adolescent Drug Trends. If you have a question about anything being discussed today, please call or email during our broadcast. The phone number and email address are on your screen now and will appear again later in the program. Also, the handouts, sign-in sheet, and evaluations are all available online. You will need to register for this program in order to access those materials. Continuing education credits have been approved for nurses, social workers, and EMS personnel for today's program. In order to receive credit for this training, you must watch the entire program, then complete and return the sign-in sheet and evaluation. While content may continue to be relevant, continuing education credit will only be awarded for 1 year for nurses, expiring on June 21, 2017, and 2 years for social workers and EMS, expiring on June 21, 2018. If you are watching this program on demand and want to receive a social work CE certificate, then you will need to complete the social work test and send it in along with your sign-in sheet and evaluation. If you are watching this program live, there is no social work test required. I'm Renee Carpenter, State Social Work Director for the Alabama Department of Public Health, and with me is Angela Camp, National Coordinator of Adolescent and Emerging Adult Marketing for Bradford Health Services. Welcome, and thank you for being here, Angela.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here. What we're doing here today, talking about what kids are using, and in particular how they are hiding what they're using, is one of my favorite things to do, because I do believe that we as adults take our best action when we try to stay on top of the information. There's so much euphoria and so much escape and so much numbing in the things that kids are getting involved in that I'm not naive enough to think that we're ever going to completely stop adolescent drug use and addiction. So the best thing that we can do as parents and as professionals who work with this age group is to continue educating ourselves. And so that's what we're going to do here today. There's going to be a little bit of background that I will give you before we actually get into the drug trends. If you'll look at this illustration that we have up on the screen now, it's one of my favorite illustrations of the teenage brain. Even though it's a little bit in jest, it best illustrates what is going on in the mind of our young people. When I talk about adolescents, I am also talking about college-age kids. For years, we were told that the brain of an adolescent is fully developed around age 21. But the latest research shows that depending on maturity level, for some of our young people, it's up to 28 or 29 years old. So when you think about that, think about kids in the military and who are making other adult decisions during that age group, you can understand the importance of kind of understanding what's going on. My husband and I have a 23-year-old, and so I always use her kind of as a point of reference. It's very easy when I stand in front of her to think, okay, she's taller than me, she's bigger than me, you know, she's a great big old student athlete, she's an adult, right? No. Their brains, even though they may be our size and they may look like and even talk like sometimes that they have fully developed brains, they are consumed with all the things that we were consumed with at that age group. I love my parents. I hate my parents. Am I dressed right? Is my makeup right? Who am I in love with today? What are we doing this weekend? Oh, I feel so awkward, right? The things that we need them concentrating on, if you can see the little purple heart at the very top, the judgment gland, it's very, very small. It's taking up a little piece of the brain. Over on the side, right-hand side, you see the communication skills. And we are talking about communication skills that don't involve their heads being tucked down into a screen, right? And then down at the very bottom, barely hanging on, is the memory for chores and homework, right? So you think about judgment, communicating with other people, doing the work that they're supposed to do now as school and then later as you know, hopefully gainfully employed adults. Those are taking up the least amount of head space for them. And so to me, it's helpful to be able to kind of frame what we're going to talk about today by keeping that in mind. They are very impulsive, right? They don't think through decisions the way that we as adults think through. So just keep that in mind as we kind of go through. Just to kind of set the stage in general about what we're going to talk about today, as Renee said, we do know that drug use changes the brain chemistry of an adolescent. When you have a cognitive system that is open and is continuing to develop, when you start flooding it with chemicals, especially binge drinking, some of the synthetics, and the quantities of some of the drugs that kids are using today, you really are flooding that system and setting it up for kind of a hijack situation. And that is what we say. Drugs and alcohol hijack the adolescent brain. They are much more susceptible to addiction than we are as adults. The example I always give is myself. I'm 48, I don't drink, but I could start today. I'm old enough, I could stop and on my way home. I could drink until I'm drunk every day, and I still wouldn't become an alcoholic as quickly as a 14-year-old girl binge drinking only on Friday and Saturday nights, because they are flooding an open system with chemicals, and it really does set that addiction up. The second bullet point was true in 1990 when I started in this field. It is true today. It will probably always be true. The two most commonly used drugs that we see among every age group we work with, adolescents, emerging adults, and true adults, pot and alcohol. Part of that is societal. There are a lot of parents and a lot of people in general in the United States who don't see anything wrong with drinking and smoking pot. We also have a lot of parents who have this false belief that, well, Miss Camp, aren't all teenagers going to experiment with pot and alcohol? And so what the kids interpret that as is a little bit of permission. If this is all I'm doing, I'm not going to end up in treatment. My parents are not going to intervene on me. And so when kids are aware that parents have that false belief, it is a little bit like, oh, well, that's okay, it's not a big deal. We even have some parents who are having what we call parent-hosted parties with pot and alcohol. It started out for years, it was just alcohol, and the belief was, well, they're going to do it anyway, so we're going to buy it and have it in our home. We're going to take their car keys away so they're safe. It's illegal, right? You're teaching your kids to break the law, and God forbid they should leave your home and get into an accident, and then there's the liability from that too. That has expanded over the last few years with the legalization movement into marijuana as well here in our state. So we will talk about both of those drugs in general more specifically when we get to the part of the drug trends. The biggest increase in categories of drug use in the past 10 years, prescription drugs, primarily narcotic pain pills, the study drugs, Adderall being way at the top of the list, and benzos, Klonopin, Ativan, Valium, and Xanax are the top four. Synthetic drug use has exploded across the United States. Thankfully, Alabama does have a synthetic act, and it has covered many of the things, including kratom, which we just had added last month. Thankfully, Governor Bentley did sign that order. But we will talk about those anyway, because we know that just because something is illegal doesn't mean you can't get your hands on it. It makes it a little more difficult and a little more expensive. The main driving factor behind the synthetic use is the fact that they are very difficult to detect on drug screens. And we will talk about drug screens in more detail in just a second. And then lastly, excuse me, as a parent and as an adolescent professional, the last bullet point is probably the most disturbing thing that we have seen. In 1990, when I first started in this field, we rarely, if ever, saw young people shooting drugs. They would drink anything, snort anything, take anything, smoke anything. They would not cross that final taboo and stick a needle in their arms. Now they are sticking needles in their arms. Heroin has made a huge comeback, including in our state, and we have in some ways normalized IV drug use. The way I always explain it is, if I'm an IV addict and my best friend is hanging out with me and decides to try the drug, if he or she has only ever seen it being used by shooting it, as far as that kid knows, that's the way you do it. So that is kind of how it has become sort of a mainstream kind of thing. I won't say the school that high school our daughter went to, but it is one of the Birmingham area over the mountain, very suburban high schools. She just graduated from college, so in the years since she graduated from high school, she's lost 6 classmates to drug overdose. And we are not talking about inner cities, right? We are talking about the suburbs. We are talking about schools where they have over a 98% college entrance rate. So the days of thinking, when you hear the word heroin, junkie, homeless, street person, the way we did years ago, now we need to be thinking our kids, because that is the age group, that 18 to about 30-year-old age group that is being killed with the heroin epidemic. The other thing I always make sure I say, and Renee did mention it in the intro, is addiction is actually a pediatrically acquired disease. I think that we intellectually know that, but it's very easy for that fact to get lost in a lot of what we discuss on a daily basis and what the media discusses on a daily basis. They spend a lot of time talking about drug-related crime among adults, prison overcrowding because of adult drug use. There are certainly thousands more adult treatment centers in the United States than adolescent treatment centers. And so we kind of miss the fact, or skim over the fact, that if you were to walk onto any of Bradford's adult treatment units or any other treatment center's adult treatment units and ask someone, okay, so you're 40 years old, you're in treatment today, you've lost everything. Your spouse has left you and taken your children. You've lost your job because you tested positive on a random drug screen. Your health is failing. You've been arrested for DUI. Tell me when this started for you. 90% of them will tell you before age 18. To me, that's probably the most important thing I can say to you today, because what that lets me know is we have an opportunity to stay on top of what kids are using, know how to intervene on them as early as possible. Some of them may not even end up at the point where they need treatment if we intervene as soon as we possibly can. And we can help some of these young people not spend half a lifetime of misery in addiction. So here are a couple of things that I get asked a lot. Angela, you know, research has shown you so much about addiction now. We talk about it all the time. Give us a checklist that tells us as parents, right? Here's what you do when your kid is little, and here's what you don't do. And maybe we can stop this epidemic of addiction. Sadly, anyone who has ever had their life either personally or professionally touched by addiction knows it is the great equalizer. It doesn't care how old you are, what sex you are, what color you are. It doesn't care if you have money or don't have money. It's one of the few times having money can be a very bad thing, because we do see a lot of young people who can afford to get into and out of a lot of trouble. But there are some kind of commonalities that we see among a lot of our patients. Our medical director at our Madison, Alabama inpatient program, which is where our adolescents are, likes to say to me, Angela, when you come to talk to me about a kid, I don't need to hear all of the pages and pages of clinical notes you have. I really can ask you 2 questions and know if that kid is an addict, or if he or she is going to be an addict if they don't stop using. And that is, do they smoke cigarettes? And is there a family history of addiction? If a kid has a yes to both of those questions, that kid is primed for addiction. They are set up genetically. And by starting to smoke cigarettes, and many of our kids are starting to smoke very, very young, they're kind of setting that brain system up to say, hey, there are things I can put into my body that can make me feel differently than I felt just a few moments ago. I liked that. Let's go do that again. So we also know that the age of first use is a huge indicator. As I said, 14-year-old girl, binge drinking just on the weekends, very, very susceptible to alcoholism. Excuse me. And it really is just a numbers game. The younger you start using, the longer period of time you're given your brain and your body to become addicted to a substance or substances. We know that young people whose brains are wired differently are more susceptible to addiction. So we have learning disabilities, psychiatric issues, psychological issues, behavioral problems, which we do see a lot of. Those kids are more at risk for substance abuse and addiction. And then trauma and stress are really 2 entry points for many of our young people into the world of drug use. I have young people just about every day say to me, Miss Angela, I didn't go to a party looking to score drugs and get high. I just feel a way that I don't know what to do with, and I want it to stop. I'm anxious, but when I smoke pot, I don't feel anxiety anymore. I'm depressed, but when I drink, I don't feel depressed anymore. Hey, guess what? I can't talk to girls. I'm very shy and nervous, but when I drink a six-pack before a party, I can talk to anyone. So you have kids who, as the title of the presentation says, are trying to numb themselves, right? They are living in a world where they're kind of on 24 hours a day, because we're all carrying smartphones or baby computers in our pocket. We have a lot of cyberbullying going on. So we assume when we hear that ding of a text message that it's something positive. And for some of our kids, it is anxiety provoking because of different things that they are dealing with. We also know that the quality of parenting is a big indicator, a big risk factor of drug use. And that's kind of in two parts. The first part is fairly obvious. If a parent uses drugs and alcohol, they are very likely to have a kid who uses drugs and alcohol. You can tell young people all day long, don't do something, it's bad. They watch us. And if they see that we are doing something, if they see that when we're stressed, we're popping a pill, when we're stressed, we're drinking, that is the behavior that they look to and model more than the words that we say. The second part of the quality of parenting bullet point is a little bit more subtle. When a kid is brought to us at Bradford, it's very rarely the first time something has happened. Let's say it's Monday morning. I'm talking to a young man. I may say to him, okay, so it's Monday morning. Saturday night you were arrested for a DUI. Is that the first time your parents were aware you were drinking? Very rarely is the answer, oh yes, it hit them out of the clear blue sky. They had no idea, right? It's always kind of the tip of the iceberg. Almost always the answer is some variation of, let's see, I'm 17 now. I know I came home from football games a couple of times last year drunk. So the next right question I ask is, so tell me what happened. What were the consequences? You wouldn't believe the number of times the answer to that question is nothing. And as a parent, I get it, right? We have this baby at the hospital. We're not given this manual when we take the baby home that says, okay, chapter 14, when your kid comes home drunk, here's what you're going to do. You just pray it never happens. And so we just kind of keep moseying along, doing the best we can as parents. And so what happens if a family has not decided ahead of time what they believe about substance abuse and communicated it to a younger kid so that when the kid becomes a teenager and does dumb things, which they all do at some point, they're kind of lost. And I can tell you how the scenario plays out in many cases. So the kid comes home Saturday evening, he's been intoxicated. He comes in, parents smell it. Most people know, don't try to talk to someone who's intoxicated. It's probably not going to end well. So the kid goes on to bed. We moms freak out, right? Oh my goodness, he's been drinking. He's a kid. My dad was an alcoholic. We need to get him some help. We kind of panic in many cases. Sadly, and I'm not picking on dads, but when it is a young boy, oftentimes what a dad will say is, and you probably all know, boys will be boys. I did that when I was his age. Calm down. It's not a big deal. You know, we'll just kind of monitor it. And so in that not agreeing about what the right thing is to do, the answer becomes nothing. The kid wakes up the next morning scared to go downstairs, right? Oh, my car's gone, my phone's gone. I'm, going to have everything. I'm going to be grounded. Kid comes creeping downstairs. No one says anything, right? In the adolescent brain, what that says is, I know my parents know I was drunk. I reeked of alcohol. Nobody said anything to me, so that must mean it's okay. So it's permission. So we have to be very careful about how we handle, and I'm not saying either the mom or the dad's reaction was the right reaction, but there has to be some discussion ahead of time so that we can communicate that. And then lastly, the genetic component is huge. A young person who has a family history of addiction somewhere, parents, siblings, grandparents on either side, is 4 times more likely to become addicted if they start using. And we do tell kids that, right, when we do drug education. But they all believe, as we did when we were their age, that they are invincible. It won't be me. It won't happen to me. I will know how to do it. On the flip side, from the risk factors, we do have some protective factors that we know kind of help bolster kids and keep them from going down that path. Excuse me. The first one is having high self-esteem, being a leader instead of a follower. We have a lot of kids who will say, I wasn't pressured into using drug use, but I do want to fit in with other kids, and my friends that I'm hanging out with also use, so that's kind of how I got involved. So when you have kids who are leaders, if they're leading other kids to do positive things instead of negative things, that's a very good thing and a protective factor. Emotional self-control and regulation, self-soothing. We have a lot of young people who, again, by development, very poor impulse control, but they also have very poor emotional control. And so what they do is when they feel certain ways, as I said earlier about numbing themselves, they're not sure exactly what to do with it. So the more we can teach our young people and kind of help push that process along, help them understand that a feeling is just a feeling, doesn't have to require action, and there are healthy ways to process that and to kind of soothe yourself. The third bullet point to me is a very, very important one, resiliency. Resiliency by definition is getting knocked down on the ground and not only knowing you can get back up, but that you can get back up and thrive. We have some kids who we deal with who have not built resiliency. They have been raised in families that have kind of protected them from the bumps in the road. And as a parent, I know that's a natural impulse to keep our kids kind of protected. But at some point, especially as they enter into the teen years, life is tough, right? You're going to fail something sometimes. Something bad is going to happen to you. That's just the way life is. And the more that we can allow kids to experience that, especially while they're still at home with us before they leave for college and they're kind of outside of our reach, that's a good thing because it helps them build problem-solving skills. It helps them understand, hey, today was awful. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to get up tomorrow, or I'll start all over again. Those are very important things for our young people to know. Family structure and supervision is also a big protective factor. When I'm talking to a young person and I ask them what their curfew is and they tell me they don't have one, like ding, 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 red flag going off. Kids need, especially adolescents, need rules. It is a time that they are pushing back against them as they become themselves and kind of figure out who they are. If they're not pushing against something, they probably don't have enough rules and enough supervision that they require. And so what I usually tell parents is if you're parenting an adolescent and everything is ponies and rainbows in your home, you might not be doing it right. There is a little bit of natural door slamming and I hate you and hollering going on as you parent an adolescent. And then lastly, clear family expectations of behavior and values. It's very important for a kid to understand how a family works and what their place is in the family and what everyone else in the family's place is in the family. And then lastly, they need opportunities for positive connections. Those can be peer, school, athletics, religious, community. One thing that I always like to point out is we do have some school systems that we work with throughout the state, for good or bad, that have zero tolerance policies, especially with electives for kids. I caution us against using those as absolutes because here is how that scenario plays out in many cases. You have a football player who pops positive for marijuana during a random drug screen. According to the school's policy, he is off the team. Sometimes off the team and sent to the alternative school or expelled, depending on the school system. Sometimes what we have done in that one fell swoop is we have taken a kid who is right on the brink, right, and we have separated him or her from the last positive thing that they were attached to. So we have to have consequences for drug use, obviously, but I do caution us against cutting off that opportunity for a positive connection because for some of our young people, that's the last one that they have. And then what we tell parents a lot, to me is very, very important, is lock everything in your house up. Alcohol in the liquor cabinet, beer if you have it in the refrigerator, and everything in your house that has liquor in it, which we will discuss in more detail when we get to alcohol. All your prescription drugs, all your over-the-counter drugs. Occasionally when I say that to parent groups, I will have a parent say to me, Angela, I hear you, but we have good kids in our home, so I don't think that's necessary. That's very worrisome to me, right? Because I've never met a bad kid. right? In all the years of working with young people, I've never met a bad kid. They're just kids. They make bad decisions. And so given that, I think it's better for us to be safe than sorry and lock things up. Because let's say your child wouldn't do anything like that. If there are other teenagers coming through your home, they know where things are not locked up. It's kind of a free-for-all among that set. I also encourage parents to talk to their teen. You know, that is not an easy thing sometimes, right? They're pushing back against us. They're rolling their eyes. They're doing all the things that they're supposed to do when they're that age. But it's important because when you're able to sit down with them and build that connection, they know, hey, my parent is really listening to what I have to say, even though my mom or dad may think what I'm talking about is silly. Later on, if they do get into trouble or get into a situation where they need some advice, they will come back to you because they know that that connection has already been built. And then I also say to parents, please know always who your kids' friends are. First and last name, right? And where they're hanging out. Many times we are talking to a parent with a kid who's in crisis, and when I say, tell me who he's running around with, they either only know first names, which is not a good thing. You know, there's 18 Austins in the high school, and it's Austin somebody, or they don't know their kid's friends at all, and that's always a red flag. Either the kid has switched friends and are hanging out with kids that the parents don't know, and if your kid is not bringing their friends around you, that is a red flag because there's usually something going on that they're hiding from you. Some of the signs and symptoms that we have been told for years to watch out for, patterns of behavior with adolescents, like are on the next couple of slides. Disturbingly enough, we are seeing a lot of young people who aren't showing a lot of these signs and symptoms. Years ago, in 1990, when I started in this field, I could walk into a classroom and go, okay, this kid has on a dog collar and this kid has his or her fingernails painted black. May not be drug use, but there's some kind of sketchiness going on, some kind of teen acting out, attention seeking. Now when I walk into a classroom or a group of adolescents, they all look like us, right? And I tell you, I blame the internet and social media. Because when we were growing up, if one of us figured out some kind of sneaky thing to do, as we all did when we were that age, it took months for that information to spread throughout the school, for kids to share that information. Now they share information in real time. There are entire industries devoted to helping people not test positive on drug screens, hide drug use. And so they're also sharing information about how to hide their drug use. It's not unusual for us to see a kid in treatment who's taken 8 or 10 Lortab a day and still making A's and B's in school. That's not the way that it used to be. Dropping grades used to be one of the first signs and symptoms. So I caution us, those of us who work with young people, use your gut. We want to watch out for the signs and symptoms. But if your gut is telling you that something is going on with the kid, whether it's your kid or a kid you're working with, trust your gut and follow that to see where that leads. By the time we see some of these very common patterns that we used to look for, a kid is in very deep trouble. Drug screens. I'm constantly talking to parents about the fact that drug screens don't show everything. Somewhere along the way, we have gotten this false belief that, hey, if I think my kid may be drug involved, I'm going to go to Bradford, I'm going to go to the pediatrician's office, I'm going to go down to Walgreens and get a take-home kit, I'm going to get a urine sample, and then I'm going to know exactly what's going on. Sadly, that's not true. A drug screen is a tool in our toolkit. It can be a very good deterrent for kids who aren't using because they aren't involved in this drug culture. But kids who are truly drug involved know what shows up on a drug screen, what doesn't show up on a drug screen. They know that there is an entire section online on paraphernalia websites and also in health food stores and also gas stations sometimes where you can buy products that will help you not test positive, including one of the latest things that we have kids reporting, Sure Gel or Pectin, which we use for canning. If you take a big spoonful of this with water right before a drug screen, pot won't show up. Now the pot is still there. If you can wait the kid out, make him or her keep drinking water, it will flush the pectin and then you can test or screen again. But the minute one young person figured this out, every young person in the world knew about it. We also have products like Quick Fix Plus, which is actually a synthetic urine that a kid can put into a Visine dropper or a medicine dropper or some other sort of container. If they're having a drug screen that's not observed directly by either a parent or professional, then they're able to use either synthetic urine, or they may get urine from another kid, right? Hopefully, they're hoping that it's a kid who's clean and is not going to test positive. But there are also things like total stealth detox, speed detox. Now, parents will ask me, do these work? Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I'll tell you how we usually catch a kid. The instructions for products like this tell you to drink gallons and gallons of water. So what happens is, I'm not sure if it's the product that's actually working or the fact that you're actually just flooding your system with water and it's carrying away a lot of what's in your system. But when they give a drug screen, a urine sample for the drug screen, it is very clear, and so we know that a young person has been trying to flush, and that's an assumed positive drug screen, because people who don't have drugs in their system don't usually go around drinking gallons of water to try to flush their system. There are also products like mouthwash that takes the entire top layer of skin cells out of your mouth so that a swab test for alcohol won't test positive. There's also hair purifying shampoo that supposedly takes drugs out of any kind of hair follicle test. Now, I'm not telling you that any of this will work. The main point is that there is an industry devoted and making a lot of money on people who use substances. Instead of, hey, let's help you get off of drugs, hey, let's help you not get caught using drugs. And so our young people are aware of that. I'll tell you what drug screens are very, very handy for people who are smoking marijuana. Marijuana is a fat-soluble drug. It is stored in the fat cells of the body. We have a lot of kids who are smoking very high quantity and very high quality pot, which is staying in their system because the THC content is so high. It's staying in their system longer. So it is a little bit easier to catch those kids with that particular drug in their system. The synthetic drug screen issue, as I said at the beginning, one of the main driving factors behind the synthetic explosion in the United States has been they're very difficult to test. The reason for that is that one of the selling points of using synthetics is the fact that they don't show up. So when you have states like Alabama who have made the majority of them, the ones that we are aware of, illegal, what the Chinese labs and street labs that make this stuff do is they go back in and tweak the formula to skirt around that legality, so it becomes this cat and mouse game. What that does for us in the treatment field and in the laboratory testing field is it makes it difficult to establish a stable drug screen that will cover everything that we're looking for. So we do have three different things. We have a synthetic marijuana test that tests for several formulations. We have one for synthetic cocaine, or what we call bath salts. And then we have one for the synthetic heroin, or kratom, which again, as of last month, is also illegal in our state. Those are standalone drug screens. They're not part of any panel that we use, that most doctors' offices use. We usually send someone to a lab like LabCorp and ask specifically for that standalone test, and it takes a little bit of time. So we do have some tools that we can use with the synthetics, but we're still much more likely to not catch someone using than we are to catch them with a screen, and drug users know that. So just a little bit about the progression of addiction. The reason that I cover this is I have adults ask me sometimes, do you really think adolescents can even become addicted, right? Because they haven't, like many adult alcoholics, drank for 20 years, right? They're kids, so they haven't even been alive very long. The other thing that I think contributes to people questioning that sometimes is the fact that we do have a lot of young people who try things and they go, they didn't do anything for me, or, oh, I got in trouble the first time or second time I used, this isn't worth the trouble, and so they just kind of lay it down. Well, what happens is, for many young people, they try something. With young people, it's usually alcohol, pot, or both. That's typically kind of the starting place. You're at a party, you're 15, 16, 17 years old, somebody offers you something, and that something is usually a beer or a joint or a hit off of a pipe. For young people in that scenario, they kind of fall in one of two categories. They either try it and go, well, I kind of like that. I might do that a time or two. You know, it's not going to run my life, but I kind of liked it. Or they may, you know, not even dabble in it very much. Those are the kids who either short-term or long-term kind of lay it down. The best way I know to explain the other group is they're 15, 16 years old, they're at a party, someone offers them something to drink or smoke, and it's the thing they've been looking for their entire life, right? It's the feeling that they have missed somehow along the way, right, for whatever reason, family situations, trauma, stress. Those are the kids that we typically are dealing with. And they may suffer consequences just like the kids in the first category. But what they say to themselves instead of, oh, that's too much trouble, I don't want to, you know, my parents are mad at me, I got kicked off the football team, I got suspended. They go, well, all this negative stuff happened, and they either don't see the connection with their drug use, or they go, well, I must not be doing it right. I need to talk to someone else who knows how to do it right so that I can, you know, get in the groove of this. And so they power through that. It's very, very difficult for adolescents to delay rewards. It's a natural part of their brain development, right? And so parents say to me sometimes, Angela, we have threatened our child with everything. We have taken the car away, we've taken the cell phone away, he can't go to prom. We're still catching him intoxicated or impaired in some way, or we're finding rolling papers in his bedroom or pot in his bedroom. What they don't understand is for many young people, consequences are potential consequences, right? I got to get caught first. I'm smarter than my parents. I'm smarter than every adult in the world. You remember that feeling, right? They know everything. If they're at a party or with their friends and whatever can lend them that euphoria, whether it's beer, pot, pills, whatever their drug of choice is right in front of them, what parents don't get is that threatened consequence, no matter what it is. It could be, you know, the worst thing you can think of. It's out here floating in the background as a potential. I got to get caught first. Meanwhile, right in front of me is a guaranteed high. The guaranteed high wins the majority of the time. And parents don't quite understand that has to do with the reward system. For many of our young people, even the ones who kind of power through and keep going, as I said, the consequences can start slowly. We as adults can get pretty fast consequences, right? We could be at a restaurant tonight, have too much wine, get in our car, bam, we got a DUI. Adolescent development is so tricky anyway, right? Parents will call me and say, Angela, he's talking back. He's staying in his bedroom. He doesn't want to do anything with his family. He's always picking on his little brother. There's weird smells coming out of his bedroom. Look, every bit of that could be drug use. It could also be normal adolescent development, right? And so sometimes there's that gray area that the kid isn't sure what's going on, the parents aren't sure what's going on, and in the meantime, things can kind of get out of control. As I said, parents' beliefs about alcohol and pot also contribute to that, right? If a kid knows, either because his parents drink and smoke pot, or that they used to drink and smoke pot when they were younger, or if that's all you're doing, it's not a big deal, then that is kind of permissions that can contribute to it too and lead the kid down the path. When we have kids who are hanging out with other young people, this is kind of the world that they're living in. And as we go through and talk about each one of the drugs, I'll pick up and kind of reference some of the paraphernalia. The main thing is, I'm sure you've already noticed, a lot of the stuff on this table doesn't look like it has anything to do with drug use. It's that hiding in plain sight that we're seeing with a lot of our young people. But the other thing is, before a kid gets drug involved and kind of in this culture, they don't know what's out there. And so you are very likely to catch them, say, searching through their bed, you know, their drawers in their bureau in their bedroom with some rolling papers and pot. But for parents who don't realize, hey, this is a new day, right? Unless my kid is at the very beginning of his drug use, he's kind of past that. So I tell parents, if you think your kid is really drug involved, you're probably past the point of looking for those simple things that parents might have thought to look for back in our day as we were growing up. They're much more sophisticated than that. And they will also leave things laying out in plain sight. It's not unusual at all for me to do a presentation like this to parents and parents to come up and go, I've seen that on my kid's dresser, I've seen that in my kid's car, which says to me, they think we're dumb. Right? And so they know that we don't know, or they think that we don't know it's drug related. And so the days of hiding things, it's kind of evolved into this game. Let's just leave it sitting out and see if my parent has any idea what's going on. So the good news, and this is good news for parents and also good news for professionals like us who work with young people, is that most kids do respond to negative consequences. Right? They get into trouble and they say to themselves, this isn't worth it, right? You know, we may have a kid who drinks for the first time and throws up for hours. A kid who smokes pot for the first time and really does get caught. Kids tell us that a lot. Oh, it was my first time. It's not always the truth, but let's say it is. For those kids, that consequence comes immediately and they may say, just not worth it. I don't know what my friends made such a big deal about. The ones that we are dealing with are the ones who, as I said, power through and don't connect those dots. And for those, the key really is early intervention and knowing what to watch out for. So just a little bit about the drug culture. What we know is that we as parents are our kids' main role models and kind of point of reference of what is okay until they're about 11. Sad. It's sad. After they turn about 12, 13 for sure, the family kind of gets in the back seat, and their friends are the ones that they are looking to. The reason I kind of laugh when I say that, I can't tell you over the years how many parents I've had say to me, and I'm sure I've said it myself, we didn't raise her to act that way, right? And so to me what that says is the parent doesn't quite get that the shift has happened. They don't forget what we've taught them, but it's not the thing that's driving their behavior. Well, when kids are hanging out with other kids who are drug involved, I'm not a big believer that peer pressure is, hey, here, this is really good pot, you need to try it. It's, y'all are my peers, right? So I'm looking to you to see what's okay and what's not okay, and how do we dress, and how do we wear our hair, and what are we doing this weekend? And so as my dad used to say, if you lay down with dogs, you're going to get up with fleas. It really is true with kids. It matters who young people are hanging out with. If they're hanging out with kids who are drug involved, it is very likely that at some point they will at least try something. I also have parents say to me, we block everything on the internet. We have one computer in our home. It's in the family room out in plain sight. But what we forget is that most kids are carrying baby computers around with them, and they're exposed to things that I'm sure that the majority of us would not agree to. And those things are sex, drugs, alcohol, violence. Even landing on a page that has some of this information by accident at times. Video games and the music that some of the young people are listening to kind of contribute to that glamorization of drug use. We also see a lot of young people wearing drug reference clothing. Again, right in front of us because they think that we don't know what it is. So when you see this t-shirt, what do you see? Pac-Man, right? Those of us who are my age, we see Pac-Man. It's like a retro Pac-Man t-shirt. I travel all over the country. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this shirt or some variation of it walking down a hallway in a middle school or a high school. It is a Pac-Man, right? Pac-Man Ghost. There are no pot leaves on it. There's nothing on it that at first glance looks like it's drug related, except it says Ghost OG, and Ghost OG is a pot strain, a very potent pot strain coming out of Colorado right now. Okay? So again, it's a little bit of a game for them to be able to wear this stuff right in front of us. We're also seeing things now. Obviously, if you saw a kid wearing this, you would assume that he or she was drug involved. It says Blunt, Fire It Up, and Kush on the back. But it is an example of what we see a lot called a stash hat, right? If you look inside the hat, it just looks like a normal lining, but this is actually a Velcro pocket that you can hide just about anything in. And you can buy these in stores in the mall, Spencer's Gifts, Lids. You can buy them online, eBay, Amazon. There's several drug paraphernalia websites. And again, most of them are not as obvious as the one that says Blunt on it. It may just have a normal, branding like we may or may not question anything about. We also see a lot of kids wearing drug-related jewelry. This is a bracelet. Looks like a survivor bracelet. It also comes in a necklace form. These are very popular, right? We've probably all seen kids, maybe even our own kids with them. The key is the connector side. If it is a normal survivor bracelet, what you will see is a black plastic clip connector, kind of flat and rectangular. This is actually a pot pipe. Okay, so you've got a bowl with a screen built in. You put the pot in. You hold the lighter against it. This is the end of the pipe. You've got this in your mouth. You light it. You're smoking. Okay. They wear them right in front of us. And again, a lot of it is a game. We see kids carrying drugs in Pez containers. Pez and pills, about the same size. We have kids being caught with drugs and drug paraphernalia in mint and gum packages pretty often. That hiding in plain sight, to me, the best way to explain it is you really can't assume that anything you see is being used for the purpose that it is being used for, right? Because pills and Altoids or pills and mints in these metal tins sound exactly the same. These little cardboard gum packages have a nice little shelf built in here. This package is about the size of a normal joint, right? And so when we see kids with things that we're very used to seeing them with, it's not unusual at all, it makes it the perfect place to hide things. I know our young people, the age group, adolescents that we're talking about are not supposed to dip, but many of them do. They smoke or dip. Dip packages that are pouches, not loose tobacco, but pouches have a handy little hidden compartment built into the top. It's not meant to carry drugs, right? It's meant to put a pouch that you're not finished with. But again, it makes it the perfect place for them to hide things. We have lolly pipes. You can buy these in the mall. Spencer's Gifts, $6.99. It has a flame-resistant tube that inserts into the candy. There's a bowl. You smoke pot out of it, and then you have a big hunk of candy to eat. And some of this stuff that I'm showing to you and saying they sell it in the mall, it's not even in the adult section of these stores. Like a 10-year-old could go in and buy some of this stuff. Flasks. This looks like a sunscreen canister or tubing. It's actually a flask. It has a wider opening than a normal sunscreen. You just fill it up with alcohol, toss it in your beach bag, purse, wherever, and it just looks like a normal thing. And the two most popular concealment containers we catch young people with are Monster drinks and water bottles. And it's not because we see them and go, wonder what that kid's drinking, if that's actually, what it's labeled. It's that it's so normal, we don't even see it, right? So Monster drink can, it looks and feels like an unopened can. It's weighted, but it's been hollowed out. And these come in every type. Pepsi cans and Coca-Cola cans. There's an A&W can here. And they come in other kinds of things. We've got Grand's Biscuits that is the same kind of thing. Lint rollers, WD-40. Even if you can imagine it being gutted out and converted into something. The second one, and this is actually one of my favorite pieces of drug paraphernalia because it's so ingenious. So it's just a water bottle, right? This holds liquid. This holds liquid. This is just a stash compartment. And for a while, what I used to say, because kids love vodka, right? It's clear. You can fill your parents' vodka bottle back up with water. Hope they don't catch you while you're still drunk. It doesn't smell as much like liquor, and it looks like water when it's in a water bottle. I used to say vodka, vodka, stash, but one of our kids, and they will enlighten you if you will listen to them, take the time to listen to them. One of our kids said, no, Miss Angela, at my high school, if you walk in with a screw top bottle, they're kind of on to us, right? So if you're walking down the hallway any adult, the principal, the guidance counselor, the football coach, a teacher, anyone can ask you for your drink so they can smell it and make sure it's really what it says it is. So you put vodka down here, whatever you're holding, and you put water up here because the principal's going to take it out of your hand and he's going to smell it and it's just water and he's going to screw the top back on it and he's going to hand it right back to you. Right. So a lot of our schools around the state have actually stopped allowing kids to bring screw top bottles in, which I think is probably a very smart idea. It just completely eliminates that possibility. So a lot of times parents in particular will say to me, well, where are kids getting this stuff, Angela? They're not old enough to go into a head shop or a liquor store or a tobacco store. Well, sometimes our kids have older friends or an older sibling, college-age sibling, so that is where some of it happens. But there are so many different websites, eBay, Amazon, Smoke Cartel, which is actually a very high-end glass pipe company out of Savannah, Georgia, has a website where kids can order things. Happy Leaves, that I actually bought a lighter pipe off of Groupon from them. That's how I found out about that company. And so if we know it, young people know it. So the next question when I say that parents will say is, well, my kid is a teenager. He doesn't have a debit card or a credit card. A lot of times gifts nowadays to young people are gift cards, right? Visa gift cards, American Express gift cards, MasterCard gift cards. Or if you have cash, you can go into just about any store and buy a prepaid card. So to follow through with that thought, I tell parents a lot, monitor your mail. Anything that's coming from China, anything that's coming from Colorado, you need to be very suspicious of, right? Because a lot of things are coming in just in that way, and it's not being questioned. I think this is probably a good place to take a break before we actually get into the drug trends, so we'll do that now.
Okay, well, we'll just take a short break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back to our program. I want to remind our audience that if you have questions, you may call them in. The number's on your screen, as well as email them in also. So go ahead, Angela.
So now we're going to actually get into the meat of the presentation, which is the drug trends. Feel free to ask any questions that you may have, and I will, again, reference some of the paraphernalia as we go through. Anything I don't reference, if you want to know about it, just ask me there at the end, and I'm happy to show you. I always start out when I talk about adolescent drug trends with nicotine. I think that sometimes we skip over or forget about nicotine because we think to ourselves, we've got pills, we've got heroin, we've got all this other terrible stuff to worry about. And again, I think that the messaging that sends to some of our young people can be a little bit permissive. One of the reasons that I know that goes on is obviously a kid under 18 isn't legally able to smoke or dip tobacco. So when they come into our inpatient program in Madison, they're told you can't have any electronics, including your cell phone, which is very traumatic for them, and you can't smoke. So a lot of times what we'll have young people say is, hey, Miss Angela, my parents know I smoke. So if they sign something that says I can smoke while I'm here, can I smoke? Their parents signing something doesn't change the law, so no. But what that tells me immediately is the parents didn't realize when the kids started with that for many of our young people is the first mood-altering substance that they use. That kind of tells them, hey, I can make myself feel a different way than I felt. It's very, very normal for us to see kids in treatment who are also smoking and started out with smoking. The other thing that I always want to make sure I say when we talk about nicotine is the issue of e-cigarettes. This is going to continue being a growing problem for us, I believe, with our young people and with adults too, just in general. One of the selling points, or two of the main selling points of e-cigarettes when they were first created was supposed to be help people stop smoking cigarettes, no smoke, no smell, right? Which sounds great, especially for those of us who don't smoke. It makes it less intrusive. But those two selling points also make it perfect for vaping marijuana oil, okay? And all of the synthetics that we're dealing with right now are also water soluble, which means that they can be liquefied and vaped. And so it's a problem that we and that law enforcement can't smell what someone is vaping. It may smell like bubble gum, but that's the flavoring. It could be anything. And law enforcement officers have said to me, Angela, we can walk right up on somebody vaping, right up to their face, unless we have probable cause and can take it from them and have it tested. We have no way of knowing what it is. It just smells like whatever flavoring. And the flavoring can be added to anything, to the nicotine, to the THC oil, or to the synthetic vaping liquids. That's a problem. So we need to be aware of that. There's also a belief among some people, and a couple of different people lately have told me this, we're seeing these vaping shops popping up everywhere we go, to the point where you think to yourself, how are they sustaining these businesses? There are so many. There are a couple of people I've had lately say to me that they believe people are licensing to have vaping shops because they're trying to get a step ahead so that when legalization hits our state, those shops are already set up with half of the business licensure to be able to dispense or to sell some of these products. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've had that said to me by a couple of professionals lately, so there may be something to that. Alcohol. The best way to sum up adolescents and alcohol is if it has alcohol in it, they will drink it, right? They want to drink the way adults drink, beer, liquor, wine. But obviously, if you're under 21, there is the access kind of issue. Now, occasionally they will have older siblings who will buy things from them. Or they will pay some other adult who they know, who's not obviously a parent usually, to buy something for them. They will steal things from home. We hear that very regularly early on. If a kid's drug of choice is alcohol, that's where they're getting it from. Because if the parents aren't aware that that's a risk factor, it's probably not locked up at the time. We see a lot of young people drinking and combining alcohol with prescription drugs. We're seeing kind of an increase in these things called farm parties, PHARM. The invitation to a farm party is, my parents are out of town Saturday. Empty your parents' medicine cabinet. Don't look at what it is. It doesn't matter. Empty it all into a bag. When we all get here, we're going to dump them all out into a big mixing bowl, and there'll be beer here. So it is the equivalent, in my opinion, of Russian roulette with pills. They certainly hope they are narcotic pain pills, benzos, Adderall, but sometimes it's birth control pills and heart medication and diabetes medication. You just never know, and that's part of the game of it. Now, I said the negative things I said about social media and the internet. Law enforcement has begun using social media to kind of bust up some of this stuff now, which is wonderful because teenagers put everything on social media, right? So they've tripped with some keywords and some other tracking kind of apps, and thankfully we're being able to use the social media on the other side to break up some of that because they're very, very dangerous. Now, kids like to drink the way adults do, but in the absence of that, they will drink other things that have alcohol in them and that we forget are in our homes. Cooking sherry, vanilla extract, cough and cold remedies usually have a high alcohol content. Hand sanitizer, which is disgusting, can be drank because it's almost pure alcohol. And mouthwash typically has a very high alcohol content. There are some weird things going on, and I'm going to tell you about the weird things. The weird things are not the norm. So let me say that very clearly. The norm is just drinking, if they're going to drink. But the weird things kind of have a commonality, a common reason among them, and I'll tell you at the end of the list. Because as soon as I say the first one, you're going to go, why in the world, when you could drink a beer, would you do something crazy like that? So a couple of years ago, one of my coworkers and I were doing a training with all of the charge nurses at Children's Hospital, And one of the ER charge nurses came up and said, "Hey, Angela, excuse my language, are y'all having problems with kids butt chugging?" And I said, "I don't know what that is, but I need to know what that is. And also, my job makes me sad sometimes because every time you think you've seen the worst and everything that they could possibly do, another thing comes along." So what the hospital was seeing in the ER at that time were young ladies who were coming in with redness, irritation, and burning in their private areas. Not too long after that, Bradford started seeing it at some of our outpatient offices and our inpatient facility, and it wasn't just the girls. What they're doing is they're soaking tampons in vodka or other liquor, but again, vodka is their liquor of choice, and inserting them one place or the other place. I'll let y'all kind of process that. I know you're thinking why. I'm going to tell you why. You can also take liquor in a medicine dropper, an eye dropper, a Visine dropper, and drop it into your eyes. Okay. You can also huff alcohol, or what the kids call smoke alcohol. If you were to take a 2 or 3 liter screw top bottle and add liquor to it and shake it really hard for several minutes, what happens is all the fumes, the vapors of the alcohol rise to the top. You can unscrew the top, put it in your mouth, and you're basically inhaling alcohol directly into your lungs and becoming intoxicated that way. And then lastly, we have Palcol. Now, Palcol was supposed to have been released last summer in the United States. Thankfully, and Alabama was among them, enough states kicked up a fuss about its release that they have actually not begun distributing in the United States. Now, head shops and some of the liquor shops that we have dealt with, I think, are ordering it from overseas and having it shipped here, because we have caught kids with it in some of the juvenile courts that we work with. But Palcol was kind of the equivalent of an adult Capri Sun. It's flat. You cut the top off, you add water, you stir it for 4 minutes, and it becomes a standard cocktail, right? And the reason it was created was for ease of transport. Let's say you're going to the park or to a music festival or something. It's real easy just to throw it in your bag. And that's actually not what we're worried about with young people. With young people, if you can turn something into a powder and snort it up your nose, they will. And this is already a powder. So why would you do any of the weird stuff that I just said, the tampons or the eyedropper or huffing alcohol or the Palcol, snorting it? Why would you do that? Why would a young person do that when they could just drink? Again, it goes back to concealment. I want to get drunk. I don't want to get caught. I don't want to get a DUI. My parents said if they smell alcohol on me one more time, they're taking my car away. If you ingest alcohol into your body any way besides drinking the liquid with your mouth, you won't blow positive on a breathalyzer. Now, it will show up on a urine test and it will show up on a blood test, but that's not the first line of testing that we use, that law enforcement uses, right? We use breathalyzers. The other thing is, not to go into too great a detail, but the areas of the body that we're talking about absorbing the alcohol into are very thin, which means that the alcohol is absorbed very quickly. So you're not only getting drunk in a way that's not going to show up on our first line of testing, but you're also becoming intoxicated very fast. Among college girls in particular, we also see the tampon method being used to save calories because your body isn't absorbing the calories when the alcohol is absorbed in that way. So that is some of the odd stuff that we've seen, just so that you're aware of it. Lastly, back in January, there was a news report put out in Tennessee about 4 young boys, teenagers, who were treated at a hospital in Middle Tennessee. 2 of them died. 2 of them were treated and released. They had drank what kids are calling dew shine. It is a mixture of Mountain Dew and racing fuel. Now think about that for a second. The night that I got the text from someone at our corporate office about this article, the link to this article, I was reading it out loud, and my husband said to me, "Isn't that the stuff that shoots flames out of the back of race cars?" And I said, "Yes." So my brain immediately goes to where it goes a lot with things like this. I would love to talk to the first person who thought that that was a good idea. Interestingly enough, We immediately put it into the presentations we did and started trying to kind of spread the word. It was also in the news, and Tennessee Poison Control also made some press releases about it. And I had a couple of adolescent professionals say to me, I'm really glad Bradford and the media and Tennessee Poison Control are making such a big deal out of this, because that way young people will know you can die from it and they won't do it. Sadly, that's not the way it works, right? The main thing I said in that little story I just told was that there were 4 boys, 2 of them died. So the way the adolescent thinks is there's a way to do it and not die. They didn't do it right, right? So just think about that. They're not scared of really too much of anything, and we need them to be scared. We need them to worry. Marijuana. I laughingly say sometimes that I feel like I talk about marijuana all day, every day, because everyone wants to debate about marijuana, right? The latest polls that I have seen show that 57% of adult Americans support legalization. We're going to continue talking about marijuana, right? That attitude, especially among the parents that we work with, is kind of an obstacle to some of the things that we try to do. The short story of pot and young people is it's making our young people stupid. I really don't know how else to say that more nicely than to just say the truth. And kids will say all the time, Miss Angela, it's an herb. God made it, right? What is your problem? And what you have to help them understand is, because they love to say to me, Miss Angela, you don't want us to have any fun. You know, you're just buzzkill, whatever. I'm fine with them saying that. What they don't understand is we're not trying to keep them from having a good time. We're trying to help them reach their full potential. And pot, in many cases, with many of our young people, is keeping them from being able to do that. It creates this apathy, especially when they're smoking high quantity and high quality pot. They're smoking a lot of pot. A lot of our young people are. The picture on the left is a very typical picture of what we would see 20, 25 years ago. The picture on the right is the new pot. Some people don't even realize it is marijuana, right? And I don't mean to pick on Colorado. It is a gorgeous state, and I have family there. It's a beautiful place, but they're the ones doing the big experiment for us, right? So they are the ones we kind of reference. The picture on the right is the result of scientists in states where it is legal going to work every day with their lab coats on to make better pot. This is scientifically engineered, genetically modified, cross-pollinated, very high THC content marijuana. The marijuana on the left, now we still do see some of this, but that's not what anybody wants to smoke, right? The right picture on the right is the good stuff. On the left, we would see anywhere from 5 to 7% THC levels. On the right, up to 26%. In many cases, and we're constantly having to help educate parents about this, in many ways, this is a different drug than what we were dealing with years ago. And so when a parent says to me, Angela, he's just smoking pot. I smoked pot when I was his age. I turned out fine, right? We have to help them understand this is not that, right? Now, we have some pretty interesting drug paraphernalia. This is probably my favorite. It's one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. So these are called finger hands, right? So when I was growing up, I'm 48. When I was growing up, a roach clip was a metal clip, and it had beads and feathers hanging off of it. And even if you didn't smoke pot, you like clipped it on your earring or in your hair because it was very cool. This is the new roach clip. Okay? So they put these on there. It looks like a cut-off doll hand, really. And they're all left-handed. Because if you hear someone say, do you smoke right-handed, left-handed? Left-handed smoking is pot smoke. It means you smoke pot. So you put it on your hand, you put the joint between the fingers, and you smoke. Because a joint, as it burns down, can burn your fingers, it can burn your lips. There's no filter on it. It makes your hands smell like pot. Part of it is most definitely the creepy factor, right? Because they love to creep us out. So just be aware if you see these. You'll probably be suspicious anyway because it's kind of weird, but just be aware that that's kind of something that we see. We see all types of pipes, from things that look like their granddad would have, and we do have kids still in their granddad's pipes, to corncob pipes, to pipes that look like highlighters. Like, it's weighted, so you'd probably pick it up and realize it was a little bit different. All kinds of glass pipes, including this one that changes colors as you're smoking out of it. I don't know what color it turns because I don't smoke, but I was told it does change colors. And you know, the list is just endless of things that you see. Probably one of the most ingenious things, I will say, that I've had parents over the years probably turn 100 of them into me. And I use this as a point to say, if you think teenage drug users are dumb, you have missed the mark. They're very smart. You can look at a lot of the stuff on this table and realize that they're just using their creativity and their brain power for something evil and not good. But if you're smoking pot in your bedroom at home and your window won't open up, let's say it's painted shut or it just won't open for whatever reason, they will take paper towel rolls, empty paper towel rolls, and stuff it with dryer sheets and exhale. It absorbs a lot of the smell, because the smell is the way we typically catch kids with marijuana. Someone asked about the trail mix, and this is just regular trail mix, but one of the things that we're starting to see an increase in our state are products, some of this new next level pot products that I'll tell you more detail after this slide, coming into our state from Colorado and Washington State, Alaska, some of the places where it's legal. Trail mix really is the perfect way to bring things through the airport in Denver or Boulder back into Alabama. Because you think about this. This is a bag full of completely odd-shaped and different-sized pieces. You unseal it. You can put edibles, which are some of the things we'll talk about when we talk about the Colorado products, or even buds of pot. You seal it back up, heat seal it back up, toss it into your suitcase or your carry-on bag. When it goes under the TSA scanner, it looks like a bag of trail mix. So it's a very common way. The other way, and I don't carry it with me because I will eat it, are family-sized bags of peanut M&Ms. A peanut M&M in an unmanicured bud of pot, which means that it has not had the seeds and stems taken out, it has been ground down, it's about the same size and shape as a peanut M&M. So they will do the same thing that I just explained with the trail mix with peanut M&Ms, seal it back up, toss it in, and it just looks like a snack someone has thrown into their bag. We are also seeing a lot of the products being shipped directly in, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. We're also, because some of this high-quality pot is fairly expensive, we're also seeing a lot more kids dealing. And I don't mean Breaking Bad dealing, but it's more like, okay, so if I'm going to pay $250 for an ounce of pot, I can't afford that, my friend can't afford that, but 4 or 5 of us together can buy it, and then we want to make sure we each have our own, the right cut of it. So one very popular one that we see looks like an iPhone or a cell phone. If you saw it up close, you would think it was a toy. But if you saw a kid walking down the hall of this building with it in his or her back pocket, it just looks like the outline of a cell phone. It's actually a pot scale. It's battery operated. It has the instructions printed inside in case you forget how to weigh the pot. They also come in CD cases. And there are now about 8 different apps on the iTunes and Google Play Store that will allow someone to turn their cell phone into a pot scale, including Weed Scale 4.20. So, for a while they were at least calling it something else. Digital Scale Pro, $4.99. What else are you going to weigh with your cell phone? Now they're just calling it what it is because there are so many states that are going legal. So just be aware that those kinds of things are out there. Some of it looks like it's drug paraphernalia. Sometimes it doesn't. This next slide actually shows some of the new kind of next level pot products that we're seeing coming out of Colorado, sold legally in Colorado, but they are being shipped into our state. I've had a couple of young people lately, college-age kids, tell me, because once they get clean, they'll tell you just about anything you want to know, right? So I'm saying to them, how are you getting this stuff in the state of Alabama? Are you making it, or is it coming in commercially? So what they've done is they'll find a connection in one of the states where it's legal. They ship it overnight, which means it's not stopping anywhere. It's going straight from point A to point B, so it's being shipped express, and it's arriving here. These products don't smell like marijuana, and they're sealed up anyway, right? So it's not as difficult as I think law enforcement and we would love for it to be. So what we have done, what we are finding is that, again, going back to Colorado, they have figured out a way to extract straight, pure THC off of the pot plant without muddying it up with the plant material. Because even though there are other elements of the pot plant that are psychoactive, THC is the main one. It is the most potent one. It's the one that we're testing for when we do drug screens. And so what you have on the left-hand side, the shiny kind of product, is called shatter. It actually looks and feels a lot like peanut brittle without nuts in it. The product on the right of that top slide is what we call wax or dabs or butter. The reason that there is a Carmex container here is, again, going back to hiding in plain sight. When wax gets hot, say it's been sitting in a car or sitting somewhere hot, it looks exactly like Carmex, right? So we fully expect, as we see an increase in this in our state, to catch people carrying it. The containers that they will actually sell this stuff to you in dispensaries in Colorado look a lot, to me, like an ointment or a lip stuff container. If I saw a young person get this out of his or her pocket, do something with it, put it back, I would, not knowing what I know, I would probably assume it was something they were putting on their lips. So just be aware of that. The way that they smoke them are typically with these specialty pipes called oil rigs. This stuff liquefies as it burns down, so you can't easily smoke it in a regular pipe without some kind of buffer built into it, because you'll suck the liquid into your throat. It also takes a higher flame or higher temperature flame to burn it, to liquefy it. So you'll see kids carrying these things we call pocket torches. It's actually 3 lighters in one, so it gets really, really hot fast. They come in bigger sizes, but this is the one that we see them carrying around with them on their keychain or using it as a keychain. Underneath that top slide on the left, what you see are preloaded M cigarettes. You can use any standard nicotine e-cigarette or e-cartridge or vaping pen to vape marijuana oil, but they're actually also manufacturing preloaded disposable ones called M-cigs. They're preloaded with a certain percentage depending on what potency you want. You vape it a time or 2 times depending on what the dosage is, and then you just toss it. And then on the right, if you can imagine it as a food product or a drink or a candy, including gum and suckers and those type things, in the states where it is legal, they are infusing THC into it, including deli sandwiches, delis where you can go in and order a sandwich and have it infused. It's very interesting because the edibles are something that Colorado in Amendment 64 did not think all the way through. I don't think they realized how that was going to hit the public. Smoking pot enters your body one way and feels one way. Using this stuff, which is very, very potent because it's pure, up to 86% THC, it'll make you hallucinate, it'll make you pass out, right? So, which is not a usual pot-like effect. The same is true for edibles. Edibles, the THC is entering your system through your stomach. And so it takes about 25 minutes to take effect. And it is a very different type high than smoking a bowl of pot, which are what most people who in Alabama who smoke pot know what it feels like. And so the reason I say they didn't think this through is if you go into a dispensary or into a shop in Colorado or anywhere else that's legal to buy edibles, you're probably not hungry, right? You're buying a delivery method for a drug. The added bonus is you got some Sour Patch Kids or something. They want to get high right now. So they may be told, hey, it's going to take about 25 minutes and then it's going to feel very different than smoking pot. But when you want to get high, you want to get high. So what they've found in several cases where the problems have come is the serving size may be one thing, But hey, I'm going to eat 2 gummy bears and I don't want to wait 25 minutes, so if 2 is good, 10 must be better. 10 is problem, right? So we've had 3 different cases. One, a 22-year-old who overate, became psychotic and shot himself in the head. One, the first case actually in spring break of 2014, which was the first full year of recreational and medical sale in Colorado. A kid ate an entire big cookie and the dosage size was about 1/4. He hallucinated and jumped off the Holiday Inn Express balcony in Boulder and died. And then there's been a third case where there was a murder that they've tied in one way or another to edibles, to high THC content. So again, some of the stuff that we're seeing looks like normal stuff. It looks like candy. It looks like dessert packaging. And this is actually some of the legal packaging from Colorado for marijuana. I wanted y'all to be able to see kind of what this stuff looks like, including the shatter. This is pretty disturbing to me. This is the packaging that shatter comes in. Now, to me, it looks a lot like some of the synthetic packages that we've seen, Spice and some of that stuff. But it doesn't smell like marijuana. It's flat. So how hard could it be to stick in an envelope and mail just about anywhere? Which is, a kid here in Alabama actually gave me this. It's empty, obviously. So just know, some of this stuff is fairly easy to get into to the states that aren't selling things legally. Back in... on 4/20, which is National Pot Smoking Day, of 2015, a company called Mary's Medicinals released a trio of transdermal products. The top one is a transdermal patch. Underneath is a concentrate and a gel. The patch looks a lot like a nicotine or hormone replacement patch, and it can be stuck anywhere on your body. The gel and the concentrate you rub on the inside of your wrist or on the top of your foot, and it enters your bloodstream that way. So it's marijuana, THC entering your bloodstream directly, transdermally. It actually is a sustained release. These are all sustained release products. It releases about 10 milligrams at a time over about 8 to 12 hours. So it's a very mild and subtle high. I've seen people on the patches. You would not know they were high. There's no marijuana smell. Their eyes aren't red. They don't seem stoned, they just seem kind of chill, right? So just know, especially from a treatment center standpoint, these are pretty concerning because they can be stuck anywhere on your body and they look like something else. So just be aware of those. Those are some of the new things that we're seeing. We've already in the Huntsville area had a group of adults busted having cases of those shipped in. So the synthetics are what we'll talk about next. I'm going to run through the synthetics and just so you can kind of see what we're talking about. Then I'm going to go back and make some general statements about them as a drug category. We've got synthetic marijuana, or what we typically and what the kids typically call spice, although there are other names. Synthetic cocaine, or what we typically refer to as bath salts, although we're not talking about Calgon, right? The new bath salt that we started seeing coming out of the South Florida area about a year and 2 months ago, called Flakka, which makes all of the other synthetics look like some sweet tarts, the effects. Synthetic heroin, or kratom, which is the shorthand we use, and we'll talk about that. I'm happy to say again that's been added to there's been new synthetic legislation as of a month ago, so that stuff has been pulled from the shelves. Synthetic LSD, which we've had a problem with in the Birmingham area, and then as I said a little bit ago, all of them are water soluble, which means that they can be liquefied and vaped in the vaping pens. So here are some general things just about this group of drugs that we're talking about. For the most part, with the exception of synthetic marijuana, they do a pretty good job of mimicking the drugs they're meant to mimic. The reason I say with the exception of marijuana is the formulas for that particular synthetic has been tweaked so much that it really has given us some very different effects, which I'll explain. What that means is that they attach to the same receptors that the drugs they are mimicking attach to. So remember that. That's going to become important in just a minute. They're also all made up of chemicals that aren't meant to be in our body, which means that our body doesn't know how to metabolize them and get rid of them. So sometimes when you see in the news that a kid has dropped in the middle of the street foaming at the mouth like a rabid dog, or his kidneys have shut down, or she has had her respiratory system shut down and is in a coma. Those can be from one standalone use of one of the synthetics, but they can also be a cumulative effect. I can smoke Spice today and not smoke it again for 3 weeks. When I smoke it the second time, it's entirely likely that some or all of that first dose I smoked is still in my body because the body doesn't know how to rid itself of it. So that's where some of that trouble comes from. Synthetic marijuana in particular, we've had a problem with in our state for a while, not just with kids, but with adults too. One of the false beliefs that we hear a lot, and I don't know where this came from, is, hey, Miss Angela, they used to sell it in the gas station. How dangerous could it be? I don't know why they think everything that is sold in the gas station is safe, but apparently that's kind of where that comes from. It's sold over the counter. Well, it's illegal now. But as I said at the beginning, just because something's illegal doesn't mean you can't get it. It means it's harder to get and it's probably more expensive. The formulas have been tweaked so much because, again, there's that legal cat and mouse game of, okay, well, this formulation, this chemical compound is illegal. We'll tweak this molecule and this molecule, spray it back on the potpourri, package it, put it back out. For a minute, it's not illegal. It's been tweaked so much that, honestly, I don't think anyone knows what's in it anymore. Because years ago when we would get phone calls on synthetic marijuana or Spice, it was typically an athletic director at a college. And he would say, hey, Angela, we got some football players here in my office. They're stoned. People are telling us they're smoking. I'm looking at them and they're high. We're giving them the NCAA drug screen and nothing is showing up. They're impaired, but we can't detect it. Can you help us? So fast forward to today. It's illegal. It's been tweaked over and over and over. The phone call I get is usually from a psychiatrist at a psych hospital because this stuff is presenting as a psychotic episode or psychosis. And a very typical story is, hey, Angela, we've got a 14-year-old boy here who's hallucinating, talking to his dead grandmother and the devil. He is extremely agitated. We've been giving him Ativan injections every 2 hours for nearly 24 hours, and nothing has changed. And that is, in many cases, the key. With a true psychotic episode, you start some cocktail of psych meds and something will move, right? You may not stabilize, but something happens. With this stuff, either nothing happens or the drugs interact and something worse will come about as a result of it. So that's not an unusual thing at all. So one of the most popular ones that we've been hearing lately, kids talking about, is Scooby snacks with an X. So when you hear them using that phrase, in a lot of cases, that's what they're talking about. Synthetic cocaine, we see this as a standalone drug. It's being liquefied and injected in many cases. It is also a substance that can be used to extend a batch of another drug like meth or ecstasy, because it just stretches it out so that a street lab and a dealer can make more money off of it. The way we typically see adolescents coming in off of bath salts is when they're coming down off of it, they become suicidal. And it's usually a kid who does not have a psych history of suicidal ideations or attempts or anything like that. It just kind of hits the kid out of the blue. So that's kind of something to watch for. Flakka is the newest bath salt that we have heard a lot about in the media. Back in about March of 2015, it started kind of spreading throughout South Florida. Within about 6 weeks, it had hit the Louisville, Kentucky area where we have an outpatient office. And then within about a month after that, it had kind of saturated all the way in between. It's all over our state, especially in rural areas. Law enforcement talks to us a lot about the things that they're seeing, and that is a very common thing that they're seeing. It looks like very clean pieces of very small crack. So just know. It's also called gravel. It's also called $5 insanity. It's the one that they call the zombie drug. When you see in the news that someone has tried to bite somebody's face off or their ear off, this is the drug that they are typically talking about. It makes people's body temperatures rise up to 105, 106. So you'll see them stripping their clothes off and running down the street naked. It also causes blackouts for 2 or 3 days at a time and violence. So people will black out, wake up in a hospital bed, in a psych unit, in jail or juvenile detention. They have no memory of what they took or where they've been for the last 2 or 3 days, but they've assaulted someone and been arrested for it too. So just be aware that that's something that we are seeing a pretty good bit in our state. Synthetic heroin, or what we call kratom. The actual plant name, kratom is the shorthand slang that we use, but it's actually Mitrogynna speciosa. It's a plant, tree in Southeast Asia that has been used for years as an opiate alternative. What we have been seeing a lot of in our state up until a month ago, and we have seen a little slowdown of it as it's being pulled from shelves, is young people just drinking bottles and bottles of this. It's not unusual at all for me to go in and do a presentation and ask the adults in the room, have you seen this stuff in the gas station? And did you know what it was? Almost always the answer is, I saw it and I thought it was an energy shot. So I'll get on my soapbox just 1 second and say, I think that packaging and marketing is very purposeful toward our young people. Because if parents don't know this is something to worry about, not that energy shots are good for our kids either, if parents don't know that this is something to worry about, when they see a young person with it, they just go, oh, it's a 5-hour energy, or oh, it's an energy shot, and they don't realize this stuff mimics heroin. It says on the bottles, this one is called K-Chill, K-Chill, it says, drink, relax, be happy. They almost all say something about muscle relaxation or insomnia relief. About half a bottle, it actually acts as a stimulant drug and kind of jacks you up. But a full bottle is a very heroin-like, pain-relieving effect. We've seen, and had law enforcement tell us that they've seen too, people drinking up to 25 bottles a day, right? That's addiction. That's tolerance increase and addiction, just like you would see with the body metabolizing opiates. And it will, as I said, attach to the same receptors and make someone in recovery from opiate addiction. It will make them relapse, right? Because it's causing that same type of euphoria with the receptors. Synthetic LSD, a little over a year ago, we saw a problem with this particular substance in the Birmingham area. Some of the private schools had problems with it. A lot of the psychedelic drugs that we see in our state come over in our state from the Atlanta area, that techno music, electronic music scene, concert scene. And so we have seen some of that coming over from that area. And then, as I said, they're all water soluble, which means that they can be vaped in a vaping pen, no smell. The two most popular ones we've seen young people with so far are Cloud 9 and Darth Vapor. Cloud 9 is a yellow liquid and Darth Vapor is a red liquid in a little squirt bottle. Dextromethorphan. Cough and cold remedies are really the main reason I tell parents to lock up over-the-counter drugs. Anything that has a DX or a DM behind it typically has dextromethorphan in it. You'll hear kids saying, I've been Dexing or I'm Dexing. You'll hear them talking about Dirty Sprite or Syrup. Skittles, Triple C's, this is that drug. Triple C's and Skittles are actually Corseed in the tablet form, and they do look like little red pieces of candy or Skittles. Robitussin in the liquid form is usually what you'll see them mixing with Sprite or 7-Up and calling Dirty Sprite, or with grape soda or orange soda, and they call that Syrup. And some of the music folks, Justin Bieber and some of those folks have been in the media over the last few years in trouble with some of that stuff too. We've seen with the tablets kids taking up to 52 at a time. Again, which is tolerance increase, which is a problem. It's not meant to be taken anywhere near that way. And when you ask a young person, well, what does it feel like when you take 52 Triple C's, they'll tell you it feels like you're in the Matrix movie. Everything is moving around you, gravity defying, and very slow and kind of trippy. Ecstasy and Molly's. MDMA is actually a 2-for-1 drug. It's a psychedelic drug and a stimulant drug all at one time. So it's the equivalent of, the best way to describe it is cocaine and LSD all at one time. These are the drugs that are very closely associated with raves, with concert music festivals. The two tablets, middle and right-hand side, are hits of ecstasy. They're usually stamped with the street branding of whatever lab is making them. On the left, on bottom, what you see are capsule forms of Molly, which is supposed to be pure MDMA. Law enforcement in our state said a lot of times kids are getting ripped off. It's not pure. It's just powdered ecstasy. But it also comes in a baggie. Kids will carry it around loose, not in capsules. They call it Fun Dip. The reason there's a pacifier up here is MDMA makes you grind your teeth really badly. So you'll see them with pacifiers, with plastic beaded necklaces, candy necklaces, mouth guards of all types. They'll lick them, put it down into the baggie of Fun Dip, and then put it back in their mouth, both as a delivery method for the drug, but also to give them something to chew on while they're using. It makes them want to dance. It messes up their body temperature. So again, you've got the raves, the music scene kind of scenario. Two new forms of ecstasy that we're seeing from about the middle of our state down into the Florida Panhandle. These are basically supercharged 2.5 to 3 times normal ecstasy. This one is called Tesla. It is an orange European press pill. It looks a little bit like a toy or Lego shield, like a little shield like a little soldier would have. There's another form that is shaped exactly like that, but it's pink and it has an S stamped on it, and the kids call it Superman. But it's very, very supercharged ecstasy. The first reports we had of it about a year ago were college athletes taking it because they wanted to get high and party and not get busted on a drug screen, because it wouldn't show up on a drug screen. Heroin is a big problem all across our country. Alabama is absolutely no exception to that. The heroin epidemic that we are seeing is coming right on the heels of the opiate pain pill epidemic. They are the same drug. They are tied together in a financial way. In many cases, what I call our opiate addicts is they're accidental addicts, right? They may have been not someone who went to a party trying to score a Lortab, but a college or high school athlete who had an injury, right? They got a prescription from a doctor. After a while, the pain goes away, but life is so much better when I took a hydrocodone. And so if your doctor stops writing you scripts for it and you start buying it off the street, it can get fairly expensive pretty quick. It's about $10 a milligram. So all it takes is someone else to say to the kid, hey, you're spending $100 to $120 worth of on street value Lortab. $15 worth of heroin is the same thing. That sounds like a pretty good deal, right? The scary thing is kids in particular don't realize this is the drug that will kill you the first time you use it. It will kill you the first time. It will kill you the 10th time. It will kill you the 100th time, right? Just shuts the respiration down. The heroin that we're seeing on the streets in our state is about 98.6% pure. So it is a very, very pure, high-grade heroin. As I said earlier, in many cases we have normalized IV drug use. And if you talk to a heroin addict who has been addicted for any period of time, and a lot of times it happens immediately, they will tell you if you're not shooting it, you're wasting the drug. That's the best way to use it. That's the high, right? And so we've normalized that. And the way it happens, these overdoses that you see, and we're seeing them every day, is, let's say my best friend is with me. I'm a heroin addict. I've been using for 2 years. So the way the body metabolizes opiates is you have a tolerance increase. So it takes a lot more heroin today to get me high than it did 2 years ago the first time I used. So my best friend's hanging out with me. She's never tried it before. She decides, hey, I want to try it. 2 things. If she's only ever seen someone shooting it, she thinks that's how you do it. The second thing is, I'm going to fix her needle for her. She's never done it. She doesn't know how to do it. And I'm probably going to fix my dosage for her, right? Because I'm a kid, and I'm probably high, right? So I've just killed my best friend. Because a first-time heroin user cannot in any way take the amount of heroin it takes a 2-year-in addict to get high. Now, I will say the one good thing that we have seen from this epidemic is the Narcan, naloxone, which is the opiate antagonist. It reverses the effects of a heroin overdose, which again is the respiration shutting down. It comes in two forms. It comes in an injection and it comes in a nasal mist. You can't use the nasal mist alone because if your respiration is shutting down and you squirt something up my nose, it is not going anywhere, so it's used as a backup. It doesn't take the heroin out of your system. It reverses it long enough for you to get the person to the hospital, right, so they can continue to be treated. So civilians can carry it now. Some of the local pharmacies carry it, and a parent or a teacher, anyone really can have it. And a lot of our first responders are carrying it now out of necessity too. We have used it so much in the state of Alabama, there was a period of time for about 4 months last year where there was a shortage of Narcan in our state, which I think speaks to what we're dealing with. North Alabama has been having a problem with fentanyl-laced heroin. There are other parts of the country who've had a problem too. The reason they noticed it is they had a spike in heroin overdose deaths among adults and started doing some forensic testing and realized a lot of this stuff that's killing people with overdoses is not heroin. It's been laced with a very, very potent, really cancer is the only appropriate use for it, opiate pain medication that we usually see in a patch. And so that was where they saw that. We're also seeing, I had a DEA agent in Mobile a couple of months ago tell me, we're also seeing heroin being attempted to be brought into our country in pill form. Some of the drug cartels, Mexico and other places, have gotten their hands on pharmaceutical presses and pharmaceutical grade dyes. They're pressing the heroin into what looks like Vicodin or oxycodone, and so it's coming into our country in what looks like pharmaceutical packaging, and it's actually heroin. So if you think you're buying a Vicodin and you're buying heroin, you're probably also about to have your respiration shut down because of that dosage. Prescription drugs, as I said, this is probably the fastest growing, over the past 10 years, the fastest growing drug category we've seen. Just like kids will say, Miss Angela, they used to sell spice in the gas station, what's the big deal? You'll hear them say that with prescription drugs too. They're prescriptions, Miss Angela. How bad could they be? And so again, that's a false belief. Sometimes it's easy, the answer, hey, it's not your prescription, so that's the reason it's not such a good idea. But they get this idea, well, a drug company, regulates it and puts it out. A doctor's writing a script for it. How dangerous could it be? As I said earlier, they are drinking with a lot of prescription pills, which really shoots that overdose risk way, way up. But the three main things we're dealing with are opiate pain pills, the stimulants, or what the kids call the study drugs. Adderall is definitely at the top of the list, and tranquilizers or benzos, which is running a very close second behind the opiate pain pills. There's not too much to say about narcotic pain pills that heroin doesn't cover too, right? I just continue to caution adults, if they have it in their home, lock it up somewhere. We've done a good job in our state of stopping pill mills, even getting rid of some of the unethical pain management clinics, but it is still fairly easy to get your hands on if you need it and are able to not look like a drug addict, which I'm not sure what that means. A lot of times, let's say you have your wisdom teeth out, they give you 30 hydrocodone, and you may take 6. So you've got 24 laying around somewhere, and the kids know where that stuff is. They know whose mom had her wisdom teeth out last week. They know whose grandparent, sadly, is in hospice care, because there are lots of pain meds typically in a scenario like that. So we've just got to do a good job of kind of going worst case scenario and locking everything up. Or using a product like Deterra, which is something that the Jefferson County DA's office is involved with. You put a prescription, you dump a prescription bottles, medications in here, fill it with liquid, reseal it, and it actually dissolves the medication, and then it's safe to dispose of it, just in any garbage can. And we have an increase in take-back days where you can turn prescriptions back in too. Stimulants or study drugs. The first problems we started seeing with these were on college campuses around midterm, finals time. But anything that happens on college campuses begins trickling down. So middle school and high school we also see problems with. Again, an increase, definitely a spike around midterm and final time. The way this scenario usually happens, I'll use a college kid as an example. So I'm a college kid. I've got a final tomorrow morning, and it's that class that if I don't ace the final, I'm not going to pass. I forgot to study, or I need to stay up and study. My fill in the blank. Roommate, boyfriend, little brother, somebody has an Adderall prescription, right? We have a lot of folks diagnosed with ADD and ADHD nowadays. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to stay up all night and focus and concentrate and ace my exam tomorrow morning. And the sad thing about that little tale is it works. And as I said, once one kid knows something works, every kid in the world knows it. And so we've got to, if kids are on this, truly diagnosed with ADD and ADHD, it doesn't get them high. But we have to keep a tight control on that stuff. In the summertime, we get calls on moms taking it for diet pills, right? So pediatricians, thankfully, are getting better and better about pulling those scripts back if they don't want the kids on them during the summertime. Ritalin and Concerta can also be abused. Adderall is definitely the one kids want. Vyvanse is also abusable, but it's the least abusable. It takes a little bit more work to get high with it. So within Bradford's adolescent treatment programs, it's really the only thing our medical director will allow a kid or approve for a kid to be on if they're ADHD. And then lastly, the benzos, which have replaced barbiturates. We have a lot of adults on these prescriptions for sleep, for stress disorders, for anxiety disorders, for panic attacks. And so when I ask a kid, hey, you're abusing Klonopin, where are you getting them? It's not unusual at all for a kid at the beginning to say, I'm stealing them from my dad, I'm stealing them from my mom. They don't think anything, it would never occur to them I would do that, so they don't lock stuff up. It's just in her purse, it's just in his bedside table. What they don't understand about benzos is it's the drug category, along with alcohol too, that the withdrawals from it can kill you, right? Because if you've been taking Klonopin, even as prescribed, 1 or 2 a night for sleep for years, you can't just wake up one day and go, I don't think I'm going to take that anymore. Because 3 days after that, when your brain wakes up from the benzo sedation, you are very likely to have a seizure, and we do see that a pretty good bit of time. We do see a lot of kids also drinking with benzos. Both are central nervous system depressants, so that shoots that overdose risk up. We've also had at one of the K-12 schools that we work with, not in our state, but in Florida, had reports of 9 kids who ingested Xanax injected gummy bears. 2 of those 9 kids were elementary kids who thought they were eating candy. So again, I just caution us to be careful because we are seeing other food products that are being infused with drugs. And then lastly, we do still see some other drugs. Crack cocaine in the state of Alabama, especially in rural areas, has in large part been replaced by crystal meth. It is the same type high. It's less expensive. Anybody who goes online can figure out how to make it. It's not a difficult thing. Inhalants. Typically, when we get phone calls on inhalant or suspected inhalant abuse, it's older elementary or younger middle school kids, although we've seen adults abusing it if they are desperate and can't get their hands on any other mood-altering substance. We've kind of caught on to the air duster thing, right? So if we see a kid with air duster, we say, oh, he's probably a huffer. So they've switched to things that, again, hiding in plain sight, like Axe body spray, which is disgusting to huff. But if you see a 12-year-old with Axe, you don't say, I wonder if he's a huffer. You say, oh, he's 12 and he wants to smell good for the little girls. We've also, in the last couple of weeks, seen an increase in girls huffing hairspray, aerosol hairspray, up to 4 or 5 cans a day. And inhalants kill brain cells from the very first time they use it. So if you suspect a kid is huffing, if you've known the kid before and have conversations with him or her now, you can probably tell because there's some impairment almost immediately. And then date rape drugs. We have, over the years had lots of phone calls, mainly from college campuses. GHB and roofies are the old standbys. Ambien is now being used as a date rape drug, and it's a very commonly prescribed sleep aid. And we've had 2 reports, 2 different law enforcement agencies in our state have had 2 different reports on 2 college campuses of Visine being used as a date rape drug. Because, again, if you see someone with Visine, you're not suspicious well, I would probably think they were smoking pot, but you don't think, oh, I'm about to be roofied. And what the dosage is, from what I've been told, 1 full bottle of Visine squirted into a regular standard size cocktail will make an average size woman pass out for about 15 minutes because it just constricts your blood vessels. It also causes diarrhea, but that's neither here nor there. So just be aware of that. Okay, it doesn't cause that amnesiatic effect you see with the true date rape drugs, but it does make you pass out. Questions? Anything?
Does anyone in the audience have any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
When you were talking about marijuana earlier, you were saying just that it makes our kids dumber. Could you kind of like expand upon that, or what did you mean by that?
Yeah, I think it's probably worse nowadays with the much higher THC content. It's not unusual, and again, I've talked to thousands of kids over all the years I've worked in and out of this field. It's not unusual at all, especially if you know a kid's history before they started smoking. One very good example, this was a very prominent track star here in our state. You know, runner, long distance runner, determined to run track in college, had probably already been talked to by a couple of schools, started smoking pot, really liked it, helped with anxiety, helped him kind of chill and not worry about some of the stuff going on. Before you know it, within about 8 months, he was like, track, whatever, right? So it takes away their motivation in a lot of cases. Now, I'm just going to say this the way I've explained it before. I hope it doesn't sound too bad. We've also seen decreases in IQ scores. Studies have also shown heavy use up to and around age 18 shoots your schizophrenic risk up about 6 times. Now, if you've got an IQ of 140 and you lose 6 or 8 points, it's probably not that big a deal, right? But if you're an average kid already, a C student, kind of, skating by, and you start smoking pot pretty heavily, dropping out, failing, is not an unusual outcome at all. It just kind of dulls them. You know what I mean? One of my coworkers, Lonnie, I love the way he put this, and so I steal this sometimes when I'm asked this question. He says, Angela, the thing about marijuana, the sneaky thing about marijuana is it doesn't do anything to you. The first time he said that, I thought, what are you smoking? What are you talking about, right? And he said, no, think about it for a second. You get drunk, you get hurt, you get a DUI, right? You take an overdose of pills, you end up in the hospital having your stomach pumped, or worse. With pot, it's very easy to smoke for a while and think, well, I don't know what people are making such a big deal about. I'm smoking, I'm still going to school, or I'm still going to work, or I'm still a functioning member of society. But if you're smoking a lot, especially with our kids, and that's primarily who I'm concerned about because we do know it changes the brain chemistry. If you're a kid and you start smoking and you're smoking a lot, it not only dulls you, it not only takes away some of your motivation, but to kind of go worst case scenario, you're sitting around for years thinking it's not doing anything to me, it's not a big deal, and the next thing you know, you wake up and you're 30 in your sweatpants, living in your mama's basement, sleeping on the Smurf sheets. You know what I mean? So what Lonnie meant was, it doesn't do anything to you until it's already done it, because it's sneaky, right? And that's not to say that happens in every case, but especially with this high quality stuff with our young people, we've seen a lot of problems. Some of the drugs we're seeing, including the high quality marijuana, is bringing out psychiatric symptoms too that we may or may not have ever shown themselves, right? Just because, again, you've got that developing brain, they may be predisposed to some disorders and so forth. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
With the marijuana again, a lot of times kids smoke it because they don't like the way they feel. They're under stress, the anxiety.
Sure.
And it gives them a feeling of not caring.
That's right.
And so, they're not motivated, but rather than being concerned about the test they're taking tomorrow, they just they don't care about it.
They don't care. Right. Yeah, that's a very good point.
You mentioned the tolerance,
Yeah.
especially to heroin.
Yeah.
if someone's able to come off of that for several years, does the body reset, or?
It does reset. Thank you for asking that. There's been a lot in the media over the last couple of years, especially since we've seen these heroin spikes with celebrity deaths. And so what you'll hear in several of the cases, or what I've heard in several of the cases, is he went to treatment and he had just gotten out of treatment and now he's died of a drug overdose. And what happens is just what you're talking about. You build up this tolerance, you come out of treatment, if you've been in there for any length of time, you have detoxed and your body's clean. There's nothing in there. And so you decide for whatever reason or whatever the circumstances are to do what we call go back out there, which means to use again. Your mind goes, well, I use this much. But you're used to using that much with a buildup in your system and usual use and tolerance. When your body is clean like a baby's and you use the amount that you used to use, that's when you're dead. In many of the cases. All right. Other questions? Thank y'all so much. We enjoyed being here, and let me know if there's anything else we could answer.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank our viewers also, and we will see you next time on the Alabama Public Health Training Network.